So we're going to take a look at the recommended specs for building an AI PC for December 2024. Now, when assembling an AI-focused PC, we need to consider what sort of tier we're looking at, the performance tier. So when you're selecting the appropriate components, you need to think about whether your PC is going to be entry-level, mid-level, or high-end system. We're going to choose components centered around the AMD Ryzen 9000 series, all of which come with an integrated neural processing unit, or NPU, and we're going to be pairing these with the best GPUs for AI. Those are going to be the NVIDIA GeForce RTX GPUs. So for our entry-level AI PC system, the CPU we're going to choose is a Ryzen 5 9600X. Now this has 6 cores, 12 threads, and a base clock of 3.9 gigahertz. It uses just 65 watts of power, and the reason for going with this is that it offers a solid balance between performance and power consumption. The NPU gives plenty of future-proofing. We're going to find more and more software that uses the NPU over the next 4 or 5 years. And it's suitable for entry-level AI tasks and general computing. It's actually a powerful chip, and I don't think you need a really powerful PCU for AI computing, but having 6 cores is a good minimum. Now currently at a similar price is the RTX 3060 12GB. This is a few years old, but it is still probably the best entry-level GPU, both for decent ordinary computing and also for AI computing. There are a couple of which I would recommend. One is this Gigabyte RTX 3060 overclocked, which comes with 3 fans. This one may be a little bit tight if you've got just a simple small case, and in that situation you could go for the MSI $279, what they call the Ventouse variety. This one is one of the sort of entry-level graphics cards that MSI produces, and it's usually one of their most economically priced. The 3060 12GB does not have a huge power requirement, and with that 12GB of RAM, it allows you to work with fairly large models, like some of the larger Stable Diffusion models, some of the SDXL models from Stability AI. It also offers with about 16 gigabytes of memory, but I would recommend 32 gigabytes. Sometimes you need to lean into the system memory in order to get the best performance with some generative AI models. The memory for 32 gigabytes is around $100, and there are quite a lot of options, but you do find some really nice deals occasionally, like this Team Group one. Now the entry-level system will provide really good performance, and much better performance than you get in the typical so-called AI PC from Intel, or what Windows or Microsoft Windows is calling their Copilot PCs. This, because of the graphics card, is a lot more powerful and can do a lot more than the standard sort of branded AI PC. Now, the next recommendation is going to be for the mid-level PC. This is going to start off with the AMD Ryzen 7 9700X. This goes up to 8 cores, 16 threads. And with this bad boy, we get a base clock of 3.8 gigahertz and a boost clock of 5.5 gigahertz. We're still staying with 65 watts TDP. But this bad boy here will give you mid-level performance. And what we're dealing with here is enhanced multi-threaded performance. This is ideal for more demanding AI tasks, and if you're dealing with content creation, this can help to speed things up. For our graphics card, we're going to go with a slightly more powerful RTX 4060 Ti 16 gigabyte. Now this is important that you go with the 16 gigabyte one, because the 16 gigabytes will help you to run larger models, like some of the more powerful models from Stability AI or some of the large language models. Now the 4060 Ti 16 gigabyte is also very good for video editing and other desktop work that may not necessarily involve AI. Current price is around $450, and the number that are available seems to be shrinking quite rapidly. It does seem possibly this is being phased out, and we don't know if there's going to be a replacement for this one. Now, if these sell out completely, you can go for a somewhat more expensive version, which we'll take a look at now. The RTX 4070 Ti Super has 16 gigabytes of faster RAM. It also has a larger memory bandwidth and is significantly more powerful than the 4060 Ti 16 gigabyte. It is quite a bit more expensive, quite a lot more expensive, but it is more powerful and it is the next one up. For the mid-level PC, we want to go with 64 gigabytes of RAM. This takes us to a couple of $100. And what you'll find is that, again, the memory speed, the sweet spot is about 6,000 megahertz or 6,000 mega transfers per second. That again is somewhat overclocked, but most decent motherboards should be able to support 6,000 in a stable way. Now, last year we were fearing that memory prices were going to go up. The exact opposite has happened, and currently memory prices are still very sweet. I've noticed a tendency for some manufacturers producing pretty decent kits, like this Crucial Pro RAM 48 gigabit kit. They're giving it away basically. It's currently $110. This is obviously a special deal, but if you want to run with 48 gigabytes, that should be good unless you have very, very high demands for multitasking purposes. You do need more RAM for that reason. But most AI operations occur on the graphics card, and the memory is like a fallback. If you need extra performance, if you need extra memory, the system memory comes into play. This is very good value at the moment, but if you do want to go for the 48 gigabyte sticks or the 24 gigabyte sticks, you may need a BIOS update to make sure that your system can handle these sticks. These are relatively new, and I think they are probably the ones to go for in future. But if your system isn't able yet to handle the 24 or 48 gig sticks, you can stick with the typical 1632, 64. I would recommend 64, but again, 48 gigabytes at $100, $110 is extremely good value. Now, you may be working with some very large models at this sort of level, so I would recommend going with an NVMe solution, and a 2 terabyte NVMe can cost around $100. Obviously, the faster ones can cost quite a bit more. And with the storage that you get on 2 terabytes, I've got to say, I think you're going to use it up fairly quickly. That's been my experience. The models that we need to use, they are huge, and they do take up quite a bit of space once you start experimenting with them. So if you feel you're going to be doing a lot of experimentation, a minimum of 2 terabytes of very fast storage is recommended. For the entry-level system, quite honestly, get the most amount of fast storage. It might have to be a SATA storage device, because that will obviously save quite a lot of money. But for a higher-end system, you want to go with NVMe, because those can provide not just extra storage, but they can also provide some extra performance benefits as virtual memory. Now, for a high-end build, we're going to go with a Ryzen 9 9900X. This takes us up to 12 cores and is a significantly faster CPU than the ones we've looked at before. Now, multi-threaded performance beyond 8 cores starts to bring in, we get diminishing returns above 8 cores. So there is a more powerful 9950X, but you may find that it doesn't actually give you the level of performance that you want, or the extra level of performance that you need to justify the extra cost. Currently it's around $600-700. Now, you could go for that one if you wanted to, and it will bring some benefits in a limited number of workflows, or if you're doing huge amounts of multitasking. But for most people, the 9900X will be perfectly fine. Now, for the GPU, we're going to go with the RTX 4090. This one is in relatively short supply, so you'll find it selling for about $600 to $1,000 more than the MSRP. However, it does provide unparalleled performance for intensive AI workloads, and it can perform almost as a professional grade graphics card. However, there are professional cards that you can purchase. They're several times the price of the 4090, and they can offer twice the amount of memory. One of the most powerful professional cards is the RTX 5880 Ada generation graphics card. This one is super powerful and comes with 48 gigabytes of RAM. This is really useful when you're working with very large models, and there's nothing quite like this except for the RTX 6000 8th generation. Now the price is quite a lot more, but with a GPU like this one, you're not dealing with the nearly 500 to 600 watts requirements of the 4090 GeForce cards. It requires just an ordinary power supply with a decent amount of wattage, and you're good to go. You can put this inside most systems without needing to rebuild the entire system with a new power supply. So there are some advantages. The main challenge is going to be the cost, which is usually several times more than the 4090. Now, if the prices we're looking at are too eye-watering for you, you can go for the 4080 Super. The 4080 Super is the latest version from NVIDIA in the 80 handle GPUs. And at $1,000, it gives a lot of performance, and there's quite a lot more supply of these GPUs than for some of the other ones that we've been looking at. But again, supplies are running out, so I wouldn't wait too long if you want to get your hands on one of these. Performance is less than the 4090, very significantly less, and we are limited just to 16 gigabytes of fast memory. And we've got the same memory bandwidth as for the 4070 Ti Super, whereas the 4090 has a much larger memory bandwidth. So it is more restricted, but with the CPU components that I'm recommending, you are going to be able to take advantage of your system's hardware when the GPU is not matching up to the performance that's required. For our memory requirements, we need at least 64 gigabytes of DDR5 memory. And again, I'll recommend at least 6000 in terms of speed. Well, actually, you don't really need much more than that. It's more the amount of memory rather than the actual speed. Now, you can get this in terms of just 2 sticks of 32 gigabytes. That will work on most motherboards. You can also go all the way up to 128. That's 4 sticks, just double up the number of sticks, and that will give you huge amount of leeway. In my own experience, I've not found it possible to use 128 gigabytes of RAM, but in newer systems, you can go all the way to 192 gigabytes of RAM. Now, for systems where you're running a graphics card that doesn't allow you to run the entire model on the graphics memory, the system memory comes to the rescue. So it's important to have lots and lots of system memory. Some of the new Flux models, for instance, will completely overwhelm a 4090 within seconds, and you'll need to rely on the system memory to do some of the computation. So that's something where you basically can't have too much memory, and it's very easy to use up all 64 gigabytes just like that. You can also go up a little bit to 96 gigabytes. So we can have some kits of 2 times 48. Again, you do need to make sure that your BIOS has been updated to allow you to run 248 sticks of RAM. 96 gigabytes, I would say, is a sweet spot for most people. And again, we can go up to 192 if you want to on the latest motherboards. Now, some of the older motherboards will just take you up to 128, but the very newest ones, we'll take a look at some of the newest ones in a second, can go up to 192 gigabytes. Now, as for storage, I'm going to recommend 4 terabytes of NVMe storage. Go for the fastest storage that you can afford. Now, this one at 7400 megabytes per second is about half the speed of some of the really fast ones. If you're really enthusiastic about generative AI, you're gonna use it up. So it's worth investing in it. Now, for the motherboard for the high-end system, I'd recommend a Gigabyte X870E or X870 motherboard. I would recommend the Gigabyte ones with easy latch. These ones will make it a lot easier for you to remove and update your graphics card when time comes to do that. Another thing that really helps in allowing you to upgrade your graphics card is having liquid cooling, decent liquid cooling. It's a lot easier to access the graphics card if you have a liquid cooler rather than if you have an air cooler. I do like the air coolers, but just bear in mind they will get in the way of graphics card upgrades, and they'll also make memory upgrades a little bit more challenging as well. And finally, for these more powerful systems, you want to go for at least a 1000 watt power supply, a very decent Corsair 1000 watt power supply. There are other manufacturers that will give very decent power supplies in the $100 to $200 level. And if you want something more powerful for overclocking, go for something like 1200 or 1600. Do have a recommendation video if you are looking to upgrade later on for the 5090, which suggests some really powerful power supplies that are gonna take care of you for pretty much the next upgrade that you need to do for your graphics card, and that can handle anything that's currently out, including the most overpowered 4090 GPUs.